Hi, Kathy. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to go over Sir Gawain and the Green Knight with you. Let's see. So, a little bit of background. The author is unknown. However, this piece is recognized for the poetic nature of its language. It's agreed that the language rivals Shakespeare, and it's just considered to be really beautiful and genius in terms of the language alone. Something else that I think is interesting, in the beginning, when when the Green Knight first arrives at Arthur's court, they play something called the beheading game, which you may have noticed. So the Green Knight says that he wants someone to chop his head off, and then in a year's time, that person will go out and find the Green Knight and present their head to him, and he will chop their head off. Now, it sounds like a very strange game, and who would want to play it? But what I think is interesting is that this is not something that the poet of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight invented. This was actually something that was found in many Celtic fairy tales and poems at about this time. So that is interesting. I think that the poet didn't invent this strange game himself, and that he wanted to include it in his poem. So okay, so getting back to Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is a poem that consists of 4 parts. And let's see, so some critics look at it as a coming of age story because Gawain sets out on this journey, and he's very unexperienced, and he's young, and he's very sheltered, and so this adventure is very trying for him, and at the end of it, he has learned something tremendous. Others, as you may have noticed if you watch the BBC documentary, such as Simon Armitage, he is a poet. He translated Sir Gawain and the Green Knight from the Old English into the version that we are reading. He calls Sir Gawain and the Green Knight the first eco poem, which I can definitely see that classification because nature is such a huge presence in this poem. If you watch the BBC documentary, you see just the landscape and where the poem was set. But then also in reading the poem, you can't help but notice there are a lot of very lengthy descriptions of nature. And then the Green Knight is green. When he first comes in, he is he's described as having butterflies all over his I can't remember if it's his boots or his legs, and then he carries a holly sprig. So I definitely think that he is representative. There's some connection with him and nature. And then when Gawain sets out for on his journey to find the Green Knight, the first leg of the journey is very trying for him, and that's simply because he is out in the wilderness and he's not prepared at all. And so nature really humbles him and causes him to face his mortality and to realize that his fancy clothes and the beliefs he has that are associated with chivalry really are of very little use to him, and that nature is a force, and that he just what he has and what he can do doesn't even come close to comparing. So let's see. So nature again is a huge force in the poem, and then another view of the poem is that its author is critical of the chivalric system because so we have Arthur's court, and then later on in the poem, we learn about Bertilac's court. That is this other court where Gawain goes and he spends time, and just so Arthur's court and Bertilac's court are very different. When we see Arthur's court on Christmas Eve, everything seems very lavish and luxurious. The food is, there's everything you could want to eat, and then there's too much of it. Everything is served on this very elaborate, I think there are trumpets that sound when the food comes out, and just everything is very, very lavish and over the top and luxurious. And then at Bertilac's court, Bertilac is the lord of the castle, and he actually goes out with his own men hunting for the food that they eat. So they can actually support themselves and live off of nature. So there's a very different relationship at Bertilac's court with nature. And what is the, oh, right. And at Arthur's court, the focus is more on appearances. So Arthur's court has a reputation for being, for having the best and bravest knights. And they're supposed to be the most chivalrous. And they have this reputation, we learn in the beginning, that is known, everywhere. But it's implied that, they're really more image than they are substance. And then also, they represent chivalry and the chivalrous system, and because they fall short compared to Bertilac's court, it seems possible that there is a suggestion that this system of chivalry where, one attempts to follow these beliefs, and there are 5 principles, but one attempts to follow them to be, I guess you could say, the best example of Christianity in a fallen world. So the principles are courtesy, chastity, piety, friendship, and I think loyalty is the other one. So the idea is that, by living in accordance with these principles, one can sort of preserve or make some attempt to preserve Christianity and to live, in Christianity and be, a great person in a fallen world. So it kind of perpetuates this ideal of false perfection, because as people we can't be perfect. We can't even come close because we are flawed. So the third interpretation of the poem is that it is Chanel, stop it, that it's criticizing the chivalric system. So just the summary of the poem, just in a nutshell, it starts at Arthur's court on Christmas Eve, and when the poem opens, there is a lot of, it's important to notice that we are told that these are the best and bravest knights. The women are the most beautiful. Everything is the best, but especially these are the best people. They are the bravest and the best knights that anywhere. So they've gathered because it is Christmas Eve, and this giant green man appears in the doorway, and it's not like he's just tinted green or no, everything about him is green. His horse is green, and he's also very tall. So they see him standing there, and they kind of just openly stare, which is not courteous. It's actually very rude. So we see from the beginning that it does not seem at all that they are living up to their reputation for being the most courteous and the most chivalrous, because when this guest or stranger appears, they aren't very friendly at all. They stare at him, and which is very rude. So they're not really off to a good start. And the Green Knight actually notices this. And when Arthur finally talks to him and breaks the silence and says, "Hey, do you want to sit down and have a drink?" The Green Knight says, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something along the lines of, it's line 255. He says, or 257, "I'm not here to idle in your hall this evening, but because your acclaim is so loudly chorused and your castle and brotherhood are called the best, the strongest men to ever mount the saddle, the worthiest knights ever known to the world, both in competition and true combat. And since courtesy, so it's said, is championed here, I'm intrigued and attracted to your door at this time." So he lets them know that, okay, hey, the reason I'm here is because you're said to be so courteous, and that kind of calls out their behavior, and it calls attention to the fact that thus far they are not living up to their reputation. And then he says that he has this game that he would like them to play with him, and he further kind of, Chanel, stop it. Pokes Chanel, stop it. He further pokes fun at them by saying, and this is line 291-ish, "So who has the gall, the gumption, the guts? Does no one have the nerve to wager in this way?" And then moving down to line, I should have gotten my glasses. It looks like it's line 310 or 309. It says, "So here is the house of Arthur, whose virtues reverberate across vast realms. Where is the fortitude and fearlessness you're so famous for, and the breathtaking bravery and the big mouth bragging? The towering reputation of the Round Table, skittled and scuppered by a stranger. What a scandal! You flap and flinch, and I have not raised a finger." So he's definitely mocking them, and so this doesn't really produce, or it doesn't really have much an effect on them. Arthur steps forward and says that he will participate. He'll play the game, but Arthur is the king, so he's not supposed to have to step up. So that, actually that's still embarrassing. And that's where Gawain steps in and says that he will do this. And he also says that it's because I am the weakest of your warriors and the feeblest of wit. Loss of my life would be the least lamented. Were I your nephew, my life would mean nothing. And then being born of your blood is my body's only claim. Now, another reason this right there suggests that it does add... what's the word I'm looking for? It does kind of lend itself to the possibility that this poem is critiquing chivalry and the chivalric system, because with chivalry and the romance ethos came the idea, which was very new, that one could rise in the world through good deed and not just through birth. However, here we have Gawain, and he's saying something that contradicts that. He's saying that the only reason he's of any value at all is because he is related to Arthur, because he has the same blood as King Arthur. So that's inconsistent with the ethos of romance and chivalry. Hang on 1 second. I'm sorry. Chanel, stop it. Get down. So Gawain goes along with this game, and he chops off the Green Knight's head, and it rolls around, and the Green Knight picks it up, puts it back on, and he leaves. But before he leaves, he tells Gawain to remember his promise, and he says something like, "I'll see you in a year." So the year passes kind of eventfully, or uneventfully rather. We don't know what has happened, but when the year is up, we do see Gawain preparing to leave, and we know that all the men and women of the castle are they're distraught and upset because they feel bad for Gawain, because it sounds like a pretty tough task that lies before him. He's got to go out into the wide world, and then he's got to find the Green Knight. And then when he finds him, he has to lay his head down to receive, a chop from his axe. So they gather around Gawain and try to offer him comfort. And Gawain's response is very interesting and significant. And I think that it really typifies who Gawain is and why Gawain is the hero in this piece. So it's line about 561 or 562. Gawain says, "Why should I shy away? If fate is kind or cruel, man must still try." So with Gawain, it's important that we see him as one who is not perfect, is certainly not the biggest or the best, the bravest, the strongest, but he has this attitude that, he's willing to try, even though he's not sure what the outcome is going to be, even though he knows he's not the best or the most experienced, he's willing to try. So it is that attitude and that willingness that really make him special and set him apart from others, because that's a good attitude. And when you think about it, that is really everything in life, is having the willingness to do things. And so Gawain has that. But anyway, as he gets ready to leave, I think there are about 3 pages dedicated to the descriptions of his clothing. And it's meant to be humorous. He is described as, or is it a knight? I think it's tricked out to ride. And to me, that does not sound like someone who's preparing to go meet this green giant. It sounds like a car on, I don't know if you remember that MTV show Pimp My Ride, but that's what it sounds like. So the poet is definitely poking fun. I'm trying to find that line about... poet is definitely making fun of Gawain, and it also shows how inexperienced Gawain is, because he's going out again into the world, into the wilderness, and he does not even know how to dress. Let's see. Is it? So he wears, let's see. Okay. All the trimmings and trappings of a knight tricked out to ride, a metal suit that shone, gold spurs which gleam with pride, a keen sword swinging from the silk belt to his side. None of that is going to be helpful to him when he's in the woods, just trying to survive at the most basic level. Line 590 tells us that fastened in his armor, he seemed fabulous, famous, every link looking golden to the very last loop. Again, not appropriate gear, but Gawain, this really shows us his lack of experience and his ignorance, because he thinks that this is, he's getting dressed up to go do this. And, he'll soon find out that this isn't the appropriate clothing. And we see that he didn't even know enough to bring something like a knife or something that could enable him to start a fire. That he didn't know anything to bring any of those more practical items that would have been of much greater service to him. So he leaves, and shortly after he sets out, this is line 691. It says, "Now through England's realm he rides, and rides Sir Gawain, God's servant, on his grim quest, passing long dark nights unloved and alone, foraging to feed, finding little to call food, with no friend but his horse, through the forests and hills." So it goes on, and again we have these very detailed descriptions of nature. But it's also important to note that Gawain nearly dies because he barely finds any food, so he almost starves to death. He almost freezes to death. This is a really rough time for him. if you watch the documentary, you see the landscape, and it looks very rough. It's very wet. It's not even that it's raining there, but it's like this mist, and you get the sense that it's like that all the time. So it's windy, it's wet. There are a lot of hills, and as Simon Armitage says in the documentary, this was a different time. This was in the 1400s, and just in general, much less was known about the world. And like in Beowulf, which was much earlier, in Beowulf, it's important to note that the audiences of Beowulf would have understood Beowulf to be not to kill monsters on a symbolic level, but to really be fighting monsters. And so, so here, what we have is a world where people really did not know what was, again, I'm paraphrasing what Simon Armitage says, but people really did not know what could be around the next corner, because they just did not have the same knowledge about the world and about nature that we have. So this is really terrifying for him, in addition to being dangerous and very cold. So so there's this image of Gawain sleeping in his armor, and it is kind of comical because again, the fact that that's what he chose to wear, it really shows how he just given that's his best effort to prepare for this journey. That's what he wears, that's what he thinks will help him, and he soon finds that none of the tricks that he uses that come with chivalry are of any use to him. So he does pray, and in the morning he notices a castle, and he's very happy because this is some place he could go to get warm. And just to make a long story short, he goes and he presents himself, and this turns out to be Berdalac's castle. So right from the beginning, we see that Berdalac's castle is very different from Arthur's. And we see this in the way that Gawain is welcomed. So he is invited in. They give him new warm, they take off his armor, they give him new warm clothes, and he's invited to stay. So that first night he eats with them, and it's just very different. So we have a true example of what courtesy is. And again, we start to see the sharp contrast between Gawain's court and Berdalac's. Let's see. So one thing about Berdalac, and he is the lord of this manor, before they go to sleep, Berdalac says to Gawain, I'm going hunting tomorrow. Let's make a pact. When I go out hunting and I come back, I will give you everything that I get, when I'm out hunting. So presumably all the dead animals and, that type of thing. And then he says to Gawain, and you will be here in this castle all day, but you will give me whatever you get being here in the castle. So it's kind of a strange, it seems kind of like a strange proposal. But Gawain, what can he do? He accepts it. And so the next day, sure enough, Berdalac and his men are out hunting, and Gawain is asleep in his bed. And who should come in but Berdalac's wife, who incidentally is just very beautiful, and who Gawain has noticed since the first moment that he arrived. And so she's very seductive, and we learn at the end of the poem that this was a deliberate attempt to test Gawain. But so she tries her very hardest to seduce him, and to Gawain's credit, he is he does not fall for it. But then she gets him because she says that she tells him that he must be courteous and that she wants a kiss, so that if he denies her, he's not being courteous like a good knight should be. So he has to kiss her, and then later that night when Berdalac returns, and Berdalac asks, okay, so what'd you get? Gawain kisses Burlack. So it's a little bit on the bizarre side, but the point is that Gawain is sticking to the terms of the pact. He's honoring his word, and that's what is important. Now, there are 3 times when Burlack's wife visits Gawain, and on the 3rd visit, and she keeps kind of making it more difficult for him each time. But the 3rd time, she offers him this green sash, and she tells him that whoever wears it will be protected from, any. No one can hurt the person who wears this green sash. So Gawain, because he knows he's going to be meeting the Green Knight, the Green Knight, the Green Man, he takes the sash. And then when he sees Burlack and they do the exchange, Gawain does not tell him about the sash. So Gawain violates the terms of the pact, and he's also lying, which would be quite scandalous at that time, because he's not being truthful. But because he thinks it will save his life, again, he doesn't say anything, and it is time for him to leave Burlack's palace. And he leaves, and he goes to meet the Green Knight at his green chapel. And it turns out, I hope I'm not ruining this, but Burlack and the Green Knight are the same person. So when Gawain goes to meet him, the Green Knight tells him that, as far as the beheading game, that he gets 3 chances to swing his axe. And the first time he misses, the second time Gawain flinches, and then the 3rd time he just makes a tiny little cut on Gawain's neck. And the reason he does that, he tells Gawain, is because the 3rd time when they exchanged, the 3rd night of the pact, Gawain was dishonest and he withheld the information about the sash. So when the Green Knight says this, revealing that he is in fact also Burlack, Gawain is mortified, because it means that he was dishonest and that he wasn't, a good knight. He wasn't the perfectly truthful knight that he should have been. But the Green Knight tells him that he is forgiven, and he says, it's okay. You did this not because you were a womanizer or because you were evil, but because you loved your life, and that is okay. But then the Green Knight also makes it clear that it is okay because Gawain has confessed his mistake. I should say that Gawain is absolutely mortified, and he throws the sash down, and he curses it because he feels like this is what caused him to sin. But the Green Knight says, and this is line 2390. The harm which you caused me is wholly healed. By confessing your failings, you are free from fault and have paid open penance at the point of my axe. I declare you purged and polished and as pure as the day you were born, without blemish or blame. And this gold-hemmed girdle I present as a gift, which is green like my gown. It's yours, Sir Gawain, a reminder of our meeting when you meet and mix and mingle with princes and kings. And this keepsake will be proof to all chivalrous knights of your challenge in this chapel. So the sash becomes an item of great importance because it's supposed to remind Gawain of this incident and of his lie, but also of the fact that he made it better by confessing his sin. So the point then becomes not that man should strive to be perfect, but that we are going to make mistakes, and when we do, we should just own up to it, and that is how we are the best that we can be. So, okay, I'm almost done. Gawain returns to Arthur's court, and he is still mortified because the whole thing with Bertilac was very embarrassing, and he still feels like a failure. So he tells Arthur and the gang about what happened, and he holds up the sash or the girdle, and he says, this is the symbol of sin for which my neck bears the scar, a sign of my fault and offense and failure, of the cowardice and covetousness I came to commit. I was tainted by untruth. This its token will I drape across my chest till the day I die. For man's crimes can be covered but never made clean once. Okay, so anyway, after he says that to them and attempts to explain the significance of this sash or girdle, we are told that the king gave comfort, and then the whole of the court allow, as they laugh in lovely accord, that the lords and ladies who belong to the table every knight in the brotherhood should bear such a belt, a bright green belt worn obliquely to the body crosswise like a sash for the sake of this man. So that slanted green stripe was adopted as their sign, and each knight who held it was honored ever after, as all the best books on romance remind us. So it's important to note that Arthur and company do not get it at all. I don't think they should be able to wear the sash because they did not go out and experience it. But also when Gawain attempts to explain it to them, they kind of laugh and, haha, oh great, we'll wear it too, and this will honor you. But see, the whole point of this sash is that it's not about honor. It's about shame, and it's about the importance of confessing one's flaws, because that is the only way that, again, that man can be at his best. So they don't get it at all. They completely fail the test. Chanel, get down. Come on. Get down. At one point when Gawain is with the Green Knight at the Green Chapel, the Green Knight tells him that Morgan Le Fay sent him to Arthur's court to put the Round Table on trial and to test what distinction they truly deserve. So at the end of this, we see that, the Round Table has clearly they've failed the test, but Gawain has passed. And again, the point of it is, well, at least as I see it, is the importance not of being perfect, but of confessing one's faults, because mankind is flawed and can never be perfect. So to try and be perfect that's ridiculous. That's never going to happen. So the point is to get over the fact that one cannot be perfect, and instead just admit your faults. So anyway, okay, it's been 32 minutes. I hope this was helpful to you, and I'm going to record the next video, I think tonight. Well, I'll have it done for you before Wednesday, so that way you get it on time. But I hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you, or I look forward to reading your next response, and Happy New Year. Bye.